Before we begin, ensure you are authorized to access Restricted Archive ECH07. Subscribe to Project Echo. To continue receiving declassified reports on disappearances the government insists never occurred. This file documents the unexplained disappearance and subsequent return of 3 individuals from Ridgewater County, a case erased from public record within hours of recovery. Not because of what they remembered, but because of what they no longer were. The subjects vanished at 2:14 p.m. on August 9th. Last seen walking into the woods behind Briar Lake during a community picnic. Dozens witnessed them step between 2 birch trees, and then simply fail to reappear. Search teams found no tracks, no broken branches, no signs of struggle. It was as though the forest swallowed them whole. For 48 hours, the woods remained unnaturally still. Wildlife fell silent. Not a single bird call. Not a single rustle of leaves. The search dogs refused to enter the tree line, whining and pulling away from their handlers. At 3:01 p.m. on August 11th, the missing individuals returned not from the forest, but from the opposite direction, emerging onto the lakeside shore as if they had walked across the water. Witnesses described their behavior as calm, vacant, and wrong in a way I couldn't articulate. The 3 individuals moved in perfect synchronization, their footsteps aligned, their posture identical, their breathing unnaturally measured. Most disturbing of all was the way they looked around, not sweeping the area, not blinking, not reacting to sound. Their heads turned in slow, exact arcs, as though they were sensing something outside the visible spectrum. A deputy approached the first subject. She did not respond until he spoke her name. Only then did she tilt her head precisely 30 degrees and smile faintly, as though learning the concept of smiling for the first time. When asked where they had been, all 3 answered simultaneously, "We don't know." Their voices were flat, emotionless, perfectly synchronized in pitch and cadence, an impossibility for natural speech. Medical responders escorted the subjects into an ambulance. A witness reported that, as the doors closed, all 3 turned their heads toward the same empty patch of sky, eyes unblinking, maintaining the position for several minutes. That detail alone would have warranted federal involvement, but what truly escalated the case was found during the first medical exam. The subjects' pupils did not react to light at all, yet they consistently oriented their heads toward even the slightest movement in the room. EEG readings revealed a faint oscillation, steady, rhythmic, unlike any known brainwave pattern. Their heart rates were identical, matching at 47 beats per minute. Even more disturbing was that their pulses aligned in perfect synchronization, as though driven by an external metronome. The most alarming finding came from a simple request. "Tell us what you remember." All 3 subjects inhaled at the same moment, closed their eyes at the same moment, and whispered the same answer. "The light." "What light?" the physician asked. Their heads tilted in unison. The whisper this time carried a tone analysts later described as layered multiple harmonics beneath human speech. "The one beneath us." Skin temperature readings indicated a drop of nearly 6 degrees within seconds of recalling the event. The subjects began to hum, soft at first, then rising in pitch. The hum caused the paper on the examination table to vibrate. The hum caused the physician to step backward instinctively. Audio monitors captured the frequency. It was not random. It contained structured intervals, patterns. One technician, listening closely, fainted before he could explain what he thought he heard. The subjects stopped humming immediately when a nurse dropped a metal tray. All 3 turned toward the sound simultaneously, their heads snapping into position faster than a natural reflex should allow. A federal response team arrived within the hour. The subjects were transferred to a remote containment facility under the designation ECH-07. Local authorities were ordered to classify the incident as a benign missing persons case. No mention of behavioral anomalies. No mention of synchronized speech. No mention of the humming. The public statement claimed the individuals had been found dehydrated, disoriented, and unable to recount their time in the woods. But the internal federal report begins with a stark warning. The subjects did not return alone. The containment chamber was a sterile white room. The subjects sat side by side on the metal bench, hands resting identically on their knees, faces blank, eyes half-lidded, yet fully aware. The lead examiner began by asking whether they felt pain anywhere. The three raised their heads at the exact same angle and said, "No." "Do you know how long you were gone? 2 days?" "Perfectly synchronized." "Do you remember what happened during that time?" Here, the subjects paused, not to think, but as though listening to something the examiner could not hear. Finally, they answered, "No." But EEG monitors spiked violently at the question, indicating significant neurological activity inconsistent with their verbal response. The examiner showed them a map of the forest where they disappeared. Their heads tilted simultaneously to the left, then to the right, then back to neutral, as if performing a pattern or responding to a cue. A faint hum began again. Low, patient. It caused a vibration in the air, like pressure building miles above the facility. When asked where the hum was coming from, the subject smiled faintly. Their smiles were identical, as if copied from the same template. The examiner leaned forward. "What is the hum?" Their answer came in unison. "Memory." A second examiner introduced a metronome to disrupt their synchronization. But instead of losing rhythm, the subjects matched the ticking instantly, even anticipating each beat by a fraction of a second. The metronome accelerated. They accelerated. It stopped. They stopped. One subject, Daniel, opened his mouth slightly. A faint clicking sound emerged, rhythmic and deliberate. It was later discovered that the clicking sequence matched the echolocation patterns of a deep-sea organism. This anomaly should not have been possible. The nearest ocean was over 900 miles away. At this point, the team began to suspect that whatever had interacted with the subjects was not terrestrial. The lead examiner asked the final question of the session. "What brought you back?" The air pressure in the room changed. Monitors crackled. The hum intensified so sharply that several staff members covered their ears. The subjects opened their eyes fully for the first time. Their pupils were no longer natural. They had widened into perfect circles, too large, too dark, absorbing light rather than reflecting it. And then they spoke a sentence that caused the session to be terminated immediately. "It needed us to leave." The examiner asked, "Why?" The subjects smiled again. "'Cause it is coming through." The moment they said "it is coming through," every electrical device in the chamber flickered. The fluorescent lights dimmed to a deep yellow glow, shadows stretching across the walls like liquid being pulled toward a drain. The subjects tilted their heads not toward any visible source, but upward, as if listening to something above the ceiling. Their mouths hung slightly open, identical expressions of silent anticipation. A low rumble spread through the facility, vibrating the floor tiles. The examiner pressed the emergency intercom. But the speaker emitted only static layered with a faint echo of the same hum the subjects were producing. One of the technicians stepped backward, reporting intense pressure in his chest, like his heartbeat was being forced to slow. His pulse monitor confirmed it. His heart rate dropped from 89 to 46 within seconds. The subjects inhaled deeply together, as though drawing in the air of the entire room. Their chests expanded unnaturally, ribs lifting in a strange, almost mechanical symmetry. When they exhaled, the tremor in the facility intensified. Hairline fractures formed along the upper corners of the chamber walls. The examiner shouted for the hum to stop, The subjects obeyed instantly, falling silent, but their smiles widened, stretching just slightly too far to be human. The room temperature dropped 6 degrees in seconds. Condensation formed on the metal surfaces. One subject's breath crystallized mid-air before evaporating. Then Daniel spoke, voice soft and disturbingly calm. "It knows we're talking about it." The examiner tried to regain control of the session. He asked what it was. All 3 subjects looked toward the mirrored observation window and whispered, "Not here." The whisper did not stop at the window. It reverberated, as though something on the other side whispered it back, perfectly synchronized. Security in the observation room reported hearing the whisper at the base of their skulls, rather than through their ears. The lead examiner ordered the session terminated, but the subjects stood from the bench in unison, a motion too smooth, too rehearsed, too unnatural. Their spines straightened, their shoulders lifted, their breathing synchronized again. The examiner instructed them to sit. They did not move. They simply turned their heads toward him in unison, the motion sharp and seamless like the rotation of a camera gimbal. One subject, Elena, stepped forward. Her footsteps made no sound. Not muffled, not soft. Silent, as though the floor absorbed them. She raised her hand and placed her palm against the examiner's chest. His heart monitor surged from 72 to 144 BPM in an instant. "It wants to see you," she whispered. The examiner recoiled. Security rushed in, but as they reached for the subjects, a sudden pulse of air shot outward from the trio. Not heat, not wind, but pressure. Every guard staggered backward, instruments rattling against the walls. One guard described it as standing next to a subwoofer the size of a building. The pulse lasted less than 2 seconds. When it dissipated, the subjects were once again sitting calmly on the bench, hands folded, expressions blank. The examiner, shaken, ordered immediate neurological scans. The scans revealed something unprecedented. The subjects' brainwaves were no longer individual. They formed a shared pattern, 3 overlapping oscillations, perfectly synchronized. This pattern resembled a communication signal. Not internal. Outbound. A digital artifact appeared on the EEG monitors, momentary but unmistakable. A spike shaped like a topographical map. Analysts later noted that the shape matched a section of the forest floor where the subjects disappeared. More concerning was that the spike contained a secondary waveform layered beneath it, a deeper frequency impossible for human brains to produce. The analysts labeled it the shadow signal. They recommended immediate containment protocols. During the next evaluation, the subjects were asked what they remembered before emerging from the lakeshore. This time, they did not reply in unison. Instead, they spoke one word each, sequentially forming a sentence. "We walked where light cannot follow." The examiner pressed further. "What was there?" The subjects blinked slowly, the first blink since recovery, and said, "Not darkness." One technician, confused, asked what they meant. The subjects turned toward him as one and smiled, their heads tilting in that same strange arc. They spoke softly. "Darkness is safe." The technician stepped away, visibly shaken. The examiner placed a glass of water on the table. A simple cognitive test. He asked one subject, Theo, to pick it up. Theo did not move. Instead, all 3 subjects reached toward the glass simultaneously, their hands hovering just above the surface without touching. The water began to ripple, not in response to movement, not from vibration, from direction. The ripples formed a perfect spiral, rotating in the opposite direction of the subject's breathing rhythm. A moment later, the water lifted upward, forming a thin column that trembled violently before collapsing. The subjects recoiled at the collapse, flinching in perfect synchronization. "It's close," Helena whispered. "It wants to finish speaking." The examiner asked what it wanted to say. The subjects looked directly into the cameras for the first time. their widened pupils absorbing the fluorescent light. "Run," they said. Before the examiner could respond, a deep subsonic pulse shook the facility, identical to the one recorded at the moment of their reappearance. Warning lights flashed. Security sealed the chamber. The hum returned, louder than ever, vibrating through the concrete foundation. The children covered their ears and cried out, not in pain, but in fear. "It found us," Daniel said, trembling. "It followed us back," Helena added. Theo, the youngest, whispered the final words of the session. "It wants to come through again." And then the alarms began. The alarms blared through the facility, not the shrill mechanical wail expected, but a distorted, slowed-down version, as if the sound itself struggled to escape the speakers. Red lights flashed irregularly, flickering in unnatural rhythms. The subjects froze, their backs straightened, their heads snapped upward at the same exact angle. They were listening again, but not to anything inside the room. A deep vibration rolled through the building, bending the ventilation grates inward. Dust poured down from the ceiling. Someone shouted for structural reinforcement checks, but the vibration drowned out every voice. The subjects stepped forward together, raising their hands toward the containment door. Their fingertips began to tremble again, that same unnatural vibration they had demonstrated before, but now amplified tenfold. The metal door responded. It bowed inward, distorting as though heated from the inside despite the sub-zero temperature drop recorded moments earlier. The examiner demanded to know what was happening. Helena turned to him slowly, her mouth trembling. Her voice came out layered, as if 2 or 3 versions of her spoke through the same throat. It wasn't finished. The hum surged. For a moment, it resembled speech syllables stretched across frequencies no human vocal cords could produce. Theo clutched his chest and whispered, "It can't find the way through." The examiner asked what it needed to find the way. All 3 subjects looked directly at him, their pupils dilated to black circles. Ooze. A shockwave hit the building. Cameras fell from their mounts. Monitors shattered. Security officers staggered, many falling to their knees as the hum passed directly through their bodies. The concrete around the containment chamber fractured thin, spiderweb cracks radiating outward like a seismic event localized entirely to one room. Helena extended her hand toward the widening crack. Her fingers contorted into unnatural positions, joints bending the wrong way, guided by something external. The crack spread upward. A sound rose from behind the wall, not scraping, not footsteps, but something like a chorus of breath, inhaling and exhaling in dissonant patterns. Theo screamed, covering his ears. "It's lost! It's lost!" The hum became a roar, and for a brief moment, the crack opened wide enough for the observation team to see. Movement. Not a shape, not a form, just motion, like something vast shifting inside a narrow space it was never meant to fit through. The subjects collapsed to their knees, trembling violently as though electricity coursed through their bodies. Daniel pressed his forehead to the floor. His voice came out in a slow, ragged whisper. "Help it." The chamber lights exploded, plunging the room into near darkness. Only the emergency red glows remained, flickering across the children's trembling silhouettes. Then, abruptly, the hum ceased. The vibration ended. The cracks stopped widening. The air pressure equalized. The silence that followed was thick and suffocating, like the sound before a massive wave breaks over a ship. One security officer approached the containment door cautiously, shining his flashlight through the fractured seam. He recoiled instantly, dropping the flashlight. His hands shook violently as he backed away, unable to articulate what he had seen. When the examiner demanded an explanation, the officer stammered. It looked back at me. There were no cameras left to verify what he had witnessed. No sensors remained functional. Whatever had pressed against the wall, whatever had tried to come through, left no trace but damaged steel and silence. Then Helena stood again, weak and trembling. She touched the wall with the tips of her fingers. "It's gone," she whispered. "It can't reach us anymore." The examiner asked if that meant they were safe. The children shook their heads slowly, their movements heavy with exhaustion. "We're not what it wanted." "Then what did it want?" the examiner asked. Daniel lifted his eyes, black, depthless, and answered, "More." Federal operatives arrived on site within 90 minutes. The entire facility was evacuated except for the children, who were transferred to a secondary location under classified transport protocol. All surviving personnel were subjected to immediate psychological evaluation. Many reported persistent vibrations in their bones, phantom hums, and the sensation of being watched from below. The damaged containment chamber was sealed in reinforced concrete. No effort was made to repair the wall. The assumption was that anything reaching from the other side would not attempt again. The official report described the event as a structural failure caused by a malfunctioning resonance device. No mention of the subject's behavior. No mention of the hum. No mention of the entity. The examiner attempted to file an internal memo, warning that the entity might attempt contact again. The memo was classified beyond his clearance level within minutes. 2 days later, the examiner resigned. He attempted to leave the country. He died in a motel room outside Seattle with no signs of trauma, except one. His pupils were dilated into perfect black circles identical to the children's. The children themselves remained in containment for 13 more days. During that time, their neural synchronization slowly faded. Their pupils returned to normal size. Their vital signs stabilized. But none of them remembered the incident. In fact, none of them remembered each other. When asked where they had been for those 48 hours, their answers, now no longer synchronized, were unsettlingly mundane. It was just trees. I don't know. It was dark, I think. Yet IG analysis showed a residual pattern deep in their cortex, a faint oscillation matching the shadow signal recorded earlier. This oscillation remains present in all 3 subjects to this day. The Ridgewater disappearance case was closed. The families were told that trauma had caused memory fragmentation. No further details were released. The woods where the subjects vanished were fenced off and later purchased by the Department of Interior under ecological pretext. Public access is prohibited. But for the analysts inside Project Echo, the case is far from finished. Because deep within the acoustic residue recorded that day, one final anomaly was found: a low, nearly inaudible whisper embedded in the hum. After hours of audio enhancement, the whisper formed a single phrase, "not through," followed by another, fainter, nearly lost in static, "not yet." The implication is clear. Whatever contacted the subjects is still searching for a way through. This is the conclusion of Restricted Archive ECH07. There will be more disappearances. Possibly already are. And if the hum returns, do not listen.